Well, there we have it. Brighton finally keep a clean sheet. Welcome along to my channel. My name is Adam MacDonald and welcome back to Seagulls Central. Thank you very much for clicking on this video. And hey, we should all be in a good mood when clicking on this video because we've got a brilliant game to talk about. Essentially completely full of positives. Brighton back to winning ways after the midweek slip up in the Carabao Cup, which was a bit of a weird performance, but we've made it. Another win, back-to-back home wins, and we've bounced back from last week at Old Trafford, and we've looked a lot better. Caveat, yes, it's Leeds United. Yes, they are quite a poor side. However, Brighton were able to get that confidence back, get that rhythm back, get that momentum back. We saw the best of pretty much everyone, and crucially, we kept a clean sheet. As I always say, if you find yourself coming back to this channel or you're new and you're a massive Brighton fan and you haven't done it already, please hit that subscribe button and turn your notifications on. It means you'll never miss a video. We upload incredibly regularly. We try and do every day, sometimes every other day on this channel, reacting to all the biggest Brighton news, transfer news, stories, deep dives, analysis, tactical kind of deep dives, all of these kind of things we do on this channel, and I would love for you to be a part of it if you are not already. Right. Let's get into it. Look, I mean, I think all round, you've got to say fair play to every single player. You've got to say fair play to Fabian Hürzeler. And you've got to say fair play to the defence because ultimately it was a pretty straightforward win. From the first minute, really, yes, Brighton had to ride their luck at times. We had to get through some moments of pressure. But actually, from minute 1 to minute 90, Brighton were the better side in terms of having the ball, in terms of creating chances, in terms of dominating pretty much every area of the pitch. It was a very straightforward result and straightforward performance from the Albion. If we talk about the lineup, it was a bit of, when the lineup was announced, I was a bit, I don't know, I wasn't massively inspired by it. After we'd obviously seen the Greek lads in midweek, we'd seen the back three, we'd seen Tommy Watson, we'd seen, all of these interesting new signings, all of the combinations. We then go back to the starting 11, which he started in the last home game in the Premier League against Newcastle United, which of course Brighton won that game 2-1. And it was the same. It was Ferdi Kadioglu at left back. It was Lewis Duncan, Paul van Hecke, Wieffer, Bart Verbruggen, Ayari and Baleba. Diego Gómez out on what lined up to look like a left wing, but we'll get into his role a little bit later. He kind of drifted and got all around the pitch, really. Minteh on the right and then Rutter in behind Danny Welbeck. And I'll be honest, I wasn't massively inspired by that. I did kind of think, is it a shame? Could we not have seen Tommy Watson from the start? And, were we going to continue with the back three? But, Brighton played very well and Brighton made it work. Let's start with the first goal. It came in the first half. Brighton went into the half-time 1-0 up thanks to a goal from Danny Welbeck. And it was a brilliant goal as well. Fantastic play down our right-hand side. Van Hecke starting with the ball, getting it out to Minteh. Minteh scoops a lovely ball over the top of the Leeds defence, chips it over into the overlapping Wieffer, who was on the end of it, right by the byline, and kind of on the half volley, past this beautiful pass back across the face of goal. Danny Welbeck coming onto it, who was stood around the kind of penalty spot, just kind of comes onto it and really crisply sweeps the ball into the back of the net. And it was a really, really nice finish. It was a lovely crafted goal all round. The little chipped pass from Minteh was brilliant. The ball that Wieffer played across on that little half volley was excellent. And obviously the finish from Danny Welbeck. Danny Welbeck, who is now, he's in the conversation for the England squad, isn't he? He's in the conversation for that. He has to be. He played an absolutely brilliant game today. Played the best part of 85 minutes. Came off just at the end. Seamas came on and replaced him. But Danny Welbeck looked brilliant. He's in some of the best goal-scoring form in his career. He's in the best goal-scoring form since 2011, I think 2012-13 maybe it was, where he scored 6 goals in 6 games for Manchester United. He's done the same here, scoring 6 goals in his last 6 games for the Albion. And I think if you were to ask him kind of how he feels he's playing, I think you would hear him say he's in the best kind of moment of his career. He looks strong. He looks like he's adapted his game. The way he comes deeper, the way he almost plays a slight version of that Harry Kane role. And he just looks really good. Allows Brighton to get bodies in beyond him. You think about the way that Minteh, in the past Mitoma, today we have players like Kadioglu, Gómez, Rutter getting in beyond him as he came deeper. I thought it was a really, really good performance. And I think, to be honest today, I think we saw a little bit more of that Fabian Hürzeler kind of way of playing. I know I've spoken quite a lot in terms of my maybe lacking in understanding, my lack of true kind of belief or understanding in terms of what Fabian Hürzeler's proper style of play is. I think we're beginning to see it over the last few months. Brighton are actually a pretty decent attacking, pressing side. I'd say that is obviously the style, the desired play that Fabian Hürzeler wants us to do, and we saw it today against Leeds United. That was the tactic. From minute one, Brighton's press was instant. Like it was brilliant. From the kickoff, from the very first kickoff, you had Yasin Ayari literally busting a gut all the way to the Leeds United goalkeeper, running half the length of the pitch just to put pressure on, and that really, really set the tone. You had we all know how Minteh works, the intense work rate that he plays with. Jorginho Rutter, the live wire that he can be. Danny Welbeck, considering his kind of age, still a very, very capable and athletic presser of the ball. And that was Brighton's way of playing today. We've spoken in the past around how Brighton, I think, find it a bit more difficult to come up against those newly promoted sides, the sides who come and sit in a low block and make it hard for you to break them down. I wouldn't say Leeds United was so much the kind of typical side who would do that. I think they managed to get out. They had some decent players of their own in attacking positions, particularly their left winger. But I do think generally when we talk about, how can Brighton break down those sides who come to the AMEX who are newly promoted, who don't have the quality and make it difficult for us, we saw the blueprint on how to do that today. And what that was one, it was a really high press whenever we didn't have the ball, to win the ball back in high areas, force mistakes from the opposition, who generally will have kind of weaker defenders than the top sides. But also I thought the general intensity and tempo at which we played with today was absolutely fantastic. And that was the reason I believe that we were able to punish Leeds United and go and get that third goal, because we just simply didn't stop. You think about the way that Jorginho Rutter scored the second goal, came with... that was the third goal. The way that Jorginho Rutter set up the third goal, it came from his pure intensity. And even when Brighton were on the ball, and it wasn't a case of us winning it back from their defence or kind of winning it back from high pressing positions, where we were moving it brilliant. Van Hecke, Ayari, the intensity, the tempo was brilliant. I thought Ferdi Kadioglu at left back looked brilliant, looked dynamic, energetic, with an engine on him, getting up and down, attacking. I thought, actually, considering I've spoken before about I wasn't really particularly sure whether Ferdi Kadioglu was a brilliant defender, I was really impressed today with his ability to win tackles and win the ball when he was up against it with his winger on the right-hand side. I thought he had a really good performance, and it was interesting because he was playing a kind of position where he was almost playing the whole of the left wing, be it left back and left wing, because what Diego Gómez we found was doing, he wasn't sitting out hugging the touchline like someone like mitoma would do, waiting to receive the ball. He was drifting into pockets. He was playing in that, they call it in the tactical sense, the zone 14. He was sitting in that kind of position that number 10 sit in, between the defence and the midfield, slightly to the left-hand side, a left-sided attacking midfielder, and allowing Ferdi Kadioglu to make those overlapping runs on the outside and really pull the wing backs out for Leeds United. And Diego Gómez were able to occupy that space in the midfield. And he obviously scored his 2 goals, but I thought Brighton are clearly making a habit. We saw it in the Newcastle game, the way they make the best of that space between the midfield and the defence of the opposition, that little half space where we overload bodies in there. We get Wieffer into there. Today got Gómez into there. Ferdi Kadioglu stayed wide to drag players out. Jorginho Rutter's in that space in the 10 as well. Danny Welbeck and then Ayari. We're able to really overload bodies in there, and that's how we can create chances. And I thought it was just a really, really brilliant display from start to finish. There was intensity, there was tempo. It was fantastic. Clean sheet as well. I think we've got to get onto that. Obviously, we'll talk about the goal scorer, the double goal scorer, Gómez. There's a few other things I want to get onto. But if we talk about the clean sheet, because I think that's been something that for us, it's been a big conversation recently. One of my recent videos talking about why are Brighton so bad defensively, and is it time for Brighton to shake things up? And I think in the long term, I think there maybe still will be a conversation there, and I do still have my views on what Brighton maybe should do. However, I think in this game, it was fantastic. Lewis Dunk, a brilliant game, it has to be said. Paul van Hecke, an excellent game as well. Obviously, I've said Ferdi Kadioglu, Wieffer, very solid as well. Ayari and Baleba in midfield I thought were pretty decent. I thought Ayari particularly, despite being a little bit sloppy on the ball, I thought he looked very good in the second half on the ball. And off the ball, he's brilliant as well. Baleba, I think the same. I think he had a very good game off the ball when it came to winning back the possession, nipping in, tucking in, getting his foot onto little balls just to win the ball back and show that little tussle and bustle and physicality. I didn't think he was excellent on the ball. There were quite a few sloppy misplaced passes. The same with Ayari, but I think in the second half, as the momentum began to change and Brighton began to, get that second, third goal, everything kind of changed. I thought between the two of them, those two midfielders had a very good job, and they were very good at protecting the back line. Duncan van Hecke, an excellent game. Verbruggen didn't have loads to do, but there was one save in the second half I remember he had to make, and he made a very good save there. It was quite towards the end, when it was just really about keeping a clean sheet, I believe, at that point. Made a good couple of claims from crosses, misplaced crosses coming into the box. Didn't have loads to do, but I thought he played pretty decent. But I think, considering all the stuff we've said about Dunk and Van Hecke and they're lacking in clean sheets, I don't think the two of them together had a clean sheet since December last year. So it was coming up to kind of 11 months or so. Actually today they did a very good job. It was like the Newcastle game in the way that they defended Altamada. They did the same thing to Dominic Calvert-Lewin, where they really partnered up to defend him. And I thought Lewis Dunk, particularly in terms of winning those 1v1 battles against Dominic Calvert-Lewin, absolutely bossed Calvert-Lewin and had a very, very, very good game. It's been a year now since Brighton went behind, scored the first goal in a game, and basically what I'm trying to say, 38 games ago against Liverpool, Brighton went ahead and then went on to lose the game. Ever since then, whenever they've scored the first goal, they've never lost the game. So it's been a year now since Brighton have scored the first goal and not lost the game. And lost the game. You get what I'm trying to say? God, I've completely butchered this. What I'm essentially trying to say is that Brighton, when scoring a goal, actually looked pretty good value for kind of not going on and losing the game. I think the issue really for Brighton in recent months, recent weeks, has been around the keeping of the clean sheets, hasn't it? And I think, to be honest, my personal view is that the jury probably is still out on that matter. I think Brighton don't look like a brilliant defensive side. However, I think in this game, when it was against poorer opposition, it could have been very easy to lose concentration. It could have been easy to, it's the Brighton way to kind of concede a fluky, terrible goal. But actually today they looked a lot more assured, a lot more composed. They played with that confidence, that tempo, and they didn't back down. Once they smelt blood, they kept going, they got the goals, and Leeds kind of lost all their confidence. One thing I will say is I thought Wieffer, to be fair to him, did have a good game. I thought in the main he was pretty good. I do think he looks a little bit suspect when it comes to 1v1 situations. Leeds' left winger, I forget his name. It wasn't Ochoa, it was like Okoro. I'm really sorry, I've butchered that name completely. But he was a brilliant player in terms of running at players. He had that Mitoma-esque ability, their left winger, to really run at Wieffer. And Wieffer, to be honest, was just hopeless in those scenarios. He really wasn't able to kind of, he wasn't able to win the foot race. He wasn't able to prevent those situations as soon as he got on his skates and got moving. But when it came to kind of playing out from the back, when it came into drifting in midfield, when it came up to kind of, when it came to standing up his man in kind of simple situations, he was really strong on the tackle, and I thought he looked really good as well. Jorginho Rutter, against his old club, brilliant, showed intensity, was part of our press brilliantly. I thought he looked really, really good. Minteh, as always, fantastic work rate. Been one of our best, but also maybe one of our most confusing players this season. But I thought he had a really, really good game today. As always, it's that intensity, it's that work rate, it's that never say die attitude. He's always part of everything, whether it be the assists, the pre-assists, whether it's dragging players out, whether it's just causing mayhem in the box. We saw it with the second goal that Diego Gómez scored. Yankuba Minteh down the right-hand side, brilliantly taking on his man, Rutter, kind of letting it run through his legs, which was a really, really smart piece of play. And then Diego Gómez with a brilliant finish. Diego Gómez, back amongst the goals, his first Premier League goal. He gets 2 of them today. We know what Diego Gómez can do in front of goal. We saw it in the Cup. We've seen it multiple times in the Cup for Brighton, particularly in the Oxford game, where obviously he scored 4 goals and was absolutely brilliant. But it's good to see, obviously he started that game against Newcastle a couple of weeks ago, had to go off injured. We weren't able to see the best of him. But he that's clearly his bread and butter, isn't it? Arriving late in the box, scoring goals. And it's really nice to have a proper goal-scoring central midfielder. They're really hard to come by. Brighton have been very good at getting defensive midfielders, but actually someone in Gómez who's young, who can score goals, who can play in kind of number 8, who can play in a version of a number 10, who can obviously play as a left-sided midfielder as well when needed. He provides us with really good options, and I think he's obviously going to have to start next week against Crystal Palace. I think he'd feel very hard done by if he hadn't. And to be honest, barring anything different, maybe you'd bring in like a Tommy Watson just to provide a bit of spark and energy against Crystal Palace. But I think by and large, I think you're going to have to keep the same 11. I thought Brighton played very well. And the caveat to all of this is it's Leeds United, and there'll be much more difficult games. And, maybe this was one of the quote-unquote easier sides to keep a clean sheet against. However, with all of that said, I think you do have to give credit for keeping the clean sheet. Brighton have been a pretty poor defensive side this season, but I think today they got their tactics right. I think they dealt with all the threats that Leeds United posed very capably. I thought in attack we looked cohesive. We looked like we were pressing as a team. We looked like he had a clear plan in terms of how he was going to set Brighton up. We were able to see Tommy Watson off the bench, Simas, Kostoulas, Joe Knight and Oriola. I think we've got to mention those two coming on. Joe Knight, obviously local lad, defensive midfielder, kind of central midfielder, combative midfielder. And Oriola, obviously the former Man United Academy graduate who's come to the Brighton Academy. And both came on literally in like the 92nd minute, probably had 90 seconds to 2 minutes on the pitch, but I think that's brilliant for both of them. It's nice that we're able to give them both minutes. The only two outfield players who didn't get minutes today were Coppola and Biscagli. But I suppose when Brighton are keeping clean sheets, they can't really be saying much. Although, you would be pretty gutted if you were them. But that's it. We've had that conversation before. We won't rehearse that one. But overall, a very, very impressive game, a confidence builder. And really by the second half, by the time we'd scored the second and third goal, by the latter stages of that second half, Brighton were just in the cruising mode. We looked a cut above. We've all done it when you play football, when you go a couple of goals ahead and suddenly the confidence rises, the opposition lose all of their confidence, and the tempo is just brilliant. The chances flow, and that's kind of how it turned out. It could have been maybe 3, obviously it was 3, it could have been 4, 5, whatever. But yeah, a really, really good performance. Can Brighton replicate it next weekend against Crystal Palace? Crystal Palace, a very good side at the minute, in very good form. Won again today, a 2-0 win against a good Brentford side. So it's going to be tough. I don't go into that with any confidence at all, particularly how games have gone at Selhurst Park in recent years. But we will cross that bridge when we get to it. A good performance this week, a good performance to enjoy your Saturday night after we had, it's that Halloween weekend, and we can enjoy it and we can get that result under our belt. Which could have been a tricky one. Yes, we've had a good record against Leeds at the AMEX in recent years and at home generally in the last decade or so. But, you never know with the promoted sides with the Albion. It's nice to just get through that nice and easily and have good performances all round and actually see a very cohesive, rounded performance from the Brighton boys. Thank you very much for watching. Let me know what you thought of the game. Who was your man of the match? How do you think Fabian Hürzeler set up? Do you think he got it right? And how relieved are you to finally get that clean sheet? Is this the kind of turning of a corner for Brighton? Did you see something today that kind of made you feel a bit better than you have done in recent weeks? Or, where's your head at overall with this performance? How good was Diego Gómez, Jorginho Rutter, Yankuba Minteh? Is Baleba back to his best? And what would you do? You're happy to keep with Duncan van Hecke for the Palace game? Let me know all of your thoughts around this game and where you'd go next as a Brighton fan. If you enjoyed this video or you just find yourself coming back to the channel and you haven't got around to doing it yet, hit the subscribe button and turn your notifications on. It means you'll never miss a video. You'll be first and fastest to every single piece of content I put out, reacting to all the biggest Brighton news, deep diving into all the big stories. And I would really, really appreciate a follow, a piece of support from you. It would really, really mean a lot. And I'm sorry that I ask so often, but thank you very much for that. Right, I'll see you on the next video. Thank you very much for watching. See you soon. And as always, up the Albion.